as officers until we get officers by the end of the meeting.
Well, why don't we do officers at the beginning of the meeting then?
Because we're going to follow the agenda, because depending on the role of the positions and who wants to be sucker enough, interested in being a chair, we want to make sure that we clarify what the rules are, and we will do that by learning about what the process is. There's literally only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings of this committee. So, and the role is to follow the scope of work voted by the select board, and we will go from there. But I think talking about the process before we do that makes more sense. So we can kind of serve as,
You have the scope of work written up so we can read it?
yes, we do. And if our friend could share that. But what we want to do is go through the process, the logistics, before we get into talking about those things. You can take 2?
That would be the service agreement, right?
Yes, got the scope of work. But we're not, you can look at it, but we're going to jump into our presentation. So we want to follow the agenda, but this is the agenda of the scope of work. Oh, do I have an extra? Hold on, I can give you mine if I have.
There's no,
So you've seen
I
it,
do
the
have
town
that.
administrators
Great.
Thank you.
along the way. You've seen them.
I've seen them all, let me tell you. I haven't seen any good ones.
All right, so for the purpose of getting us going, Phil, you'll take the scant notes that we need, and I will go through the agenda. So first on the agenda is introductions. So we would love to know who everybody is. We will introduce ourselves briefly. We do have a hard stop because the select board is meeting at 7:30, and we will keep to that. So we will move quickly through the agenda. My name is Mary Icardi. I'm so happy to be working with you all. I lead the practice, HR practice at the Collins Center for Public Management. Been with the center 16 years. I have been a dedicated fool to the public sector for over 30 years. All of my work experience has been in the public sector. Before the Collins Center, where we do classification, compensation, policy reviews. That's only recruitments, only on the HR side. We do an awful lot of other work as well. We have a finance team, a government structure committee. So you name it, municipal, we have somebody who does it. The job I was able to quit 21 years ago. I was the HR director for the town of Watertown. I know that because my son just turned 21, and he was my 3rd kid, and I couldn't afford daycare for 3 kids, so I quit my job when we moved to Shrewsbury. Not that you care, next month I'll be married 30 years to my wonderful husband who has put up with me for a long time. Before Watertown, the job I quit was Watertown. Before that was Barnstable. Before that was Wellesley. Before that was the Mass DPW. So it hasn't been the Mass DPW since Governor Weld got elected. So if you do all of the math, I'm 61 years old. So that's me in a nutshell. What I will do is have Phil introduce himself, and then we'll just go around. And what we want to know from you, you don't need to give us your whole background, but really your name, how long you've been in the town, and why you are foolish enough to want to be on this committee.
thank you, Mary. My name is Phil Lemnios. I've been a town manager, or currently retired, but I was served in 3 communities in Massachusetts. So City of Attleboro, where I was assistant to the mayor, which was a grant-funded position many years ago to bring professional management into that city. I then became the town manager in Hull, served in Hull for about a 10-year period, became the town administrator in Natick. I was in Natick for about 5.5 years, and then Hull asked me to come back. So the importance of those 3 positions are, I've served in basically the 3 forms of government in Massachusetts for cities and towns. I served in a city function, which has a city council, mayor form of government. Hull is similar to many communities in Mass in that it has an open town meeting, which means any member of the public can attend that town meeting and voice whatever opinions they may have. And in Natick, it was a representative town meeting. So my experience as a town manager has allowed me to gain a deep understanding of the functioning of cities and towns in Massachusetts, how departments function, what their roles and relationships are to each other, as well as the roles and relationships with appointed officials. During the course of my career, I served on a series of different advisory committees, one for the creation of the state park, or the national park, the Boston Harbor National Park, as well as created a regional dispatch center that serves 4 communities here on the South Shore. In retirement, I work at the Collins Center as an associate, which means that I work on projects as they come up that may be suited to my particular experience. So I'm currently involved in a series of projects, classification and compensation projects, where I sit and I'll interview department heads and department personnel in order to update their job descriptions and then compare that job description to similarly situated jobs in other communities. I work on town administrator, town manager searches, and working currently also on an organizational study for another community, and how that community is organized and what's the best staffing model and so forth for that community. I look forward to working with everyone here. This is an incredibly important endeavor. This is the first step in the process, which is really important for the select board. I see there's a couple of select board members here. And the choice of the next town administrator will have great ramifications for the community of Marshfield. And so it's really important that we have a process that is well documented, a process that is rigorous, and a process that brings forward to the select board candidates that they can make a selection from. And the Collins Center is here to help guide that process, not to decide that process. So, thank you. Hello, sir, you want to kick off, say a few words?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Wenning. After college, my professional background for over 40 years has been in the insurance industry. Through those years, I attained managerial positions working for major stock insurance companies. I'm recently retired, and having owned an insurance agency for the past 25 years here in Marshfield. Currently, I participate with the Massachusetts Division of Insurance Hearing Officers on hearings related to appeals for at-fault accident surcharges. I have been a resident of Marshfield, attending town meeting 38 years, and frequently serve as a teller at town meeting. I am happily married to my wife of 46 years, have 2 daughters and 2 grandsons. I'm looking forward to working with all of you appointed on this committee and the Collins Center in our goal to screen for the best town administrator. To those candidates who were not appointed, many of you that I know personally, I thank you for your years of service to Marshfield. Please know that your dedication has inspired me to serve on this committee today. Thank you very much.
My name's Jackie Mason. I've been a resident since 2016. I'm a jack of all trades, but my most important job is a mom of 2, and I want our community to be amazing. I want it to be run by an amazing person, and I own a business. I've published five books, and I'm involved in the schools, and I'm a strong advocate for transparency and accountability, so that's why I believe that I will be a good fit and I will represent the people of Marshfield as best as I can. Thank you.
Hi, Linda Walsh. I've been in the town for 20 years now. I work full-time telecommunications. I have 2 kids in the high school, and I've started attending the town meetings the last few years and felt that when this came up for search for the town administrator, I felt that I wanted to be a part of that, to find somebody who can effectively help run this town and financially responsible. So that's why I volunteered to do this and was chosen, I guess. So I'm looking forward to working with everyone in the Collins Center. Thank you.
My name is Chris Kalos. I've been in Marshfield since 2011. Before that, I was in Hull. I knew Mr. Lemnios quite well, so done a good job down there. I've had 3 students that have graduated from Marshfield High since being here since 2011. I just retired as a Boston Public School teacher. I was part of the DPW search committee, which was a couple of years ago now. Was a initial member of the Rec Trails Committee, and not on there anymore, but they've done a tremendous job, good job with that. So I've been involved with the town meeting. I was actually go to the meetings in Hull. I was actually a town meeting member in Milton. There was a representative closed town meeting there. So familiar with the process. This is a very important, if not the important position that we can be involved in as far as heading this town. And it's a wonderful town. It has a lot to offer, just soup to nuts, and just want to try to be involved in it. Looking at the information, a lot of good people, a lot of people being involved, and just want to be just one of those people who's just doing my part.
Dennis Keller, other than 3 months in Rosendale, I heard you, Steve, talking about how 3 months in Rosendale, I moved down here, or my folks moved me down here back in '75, so a 50-year citizen of Marshfield. I'm a Brent Rock guy that married a Green Harbor girl and moved to Wrexham, right? So I kind of at least have 3 of the 5 villages kind of covered. In the private sector, I work in the financial services industry just under 30 years. I serve at the pleasure of the town of Marshfield on a couple different committees, the rec committee, the CPC. I also am very involved in the youth program of soccer. So I think I have kind of an outsider's perspective with a little inside knowledge based on my participation in those committees. So I'm super excited to be part of this group and certainly hope I can add some value.
Great.
Steve Lynch, I've lived here almost 60 years. I have a degree from UMass Boston, political science. But most importantly, I pay $30,000 a year in property taxes in this town. And I understand about how everyone who has to pay property taxes in this town, how they want the dollars spent wisely. And I've seen it all over the last however many years. I've run for selectman a couple of times. And so I will pick the town administrator that I think that will do the right thing with the budget. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
It must be my turn, okay.
Yeah, it's your turn.
My name is Wallace Coyle. I'm from the Irish Riviera on Ashburton Avenue. And I came here by way of Norwell. We've been here 17 years now, and we were 30 years in Norwell before we came down the road and saw the golden light. I met my wife at Boston College. We have been married 57 years now, 3 children and 8 grandchildren. I taught at UMass Boston as an education, and I didn't have him as a student in class, but I also taught at Boston College in the Carroll School of Management and the MBA program. On the side, but then became a full-time thing, I had a consulting practice, and once upon a time when Charlie Baker was the Secretary of Administration and Finance, he pulled my name out of a list of approved trainers and vendors. This was the time where they had some problems with I think it was Chelsea at the time, where they had the receivership and all of that problem. So anyway, the governor at the time said, I don't want that to happen anymore, so I want you to be out there ahead of the game, not me, but he was talking to Charlie Baker at the time. And so anyway, he said, set up a thing where people go out and we get people that are in difficulties or problems that towns may have. So I worked with 17 different towns, and if you read the Globe or the Herald in the 80s and 90s, I was behind the scenes helping to save those places from going bankrupt and stuff like that. So anyway, I did a lot of management training. There were 3 different units in it. One was legal, not me. The second one was administrative, the Division of Local Services. And the third one was management in terms of how to get people to manage in the public sector and customer service and do things that are not going to put them on the front page of the Globe. doing things illegally, okay? So we saved some people along the way. But you can probably, on the fingers of one hand, identify some of those towns that we worked with. And I've since been retired, and I'm also on the board of trustees for the Ventress Library, and keeping myself out of trouble. But I think I bring some background and experience in terms of what you should be looking for and you need to have in terms of a town administrator. If I've been here for 17 years, I've survived a number of different ones in the process. Good to be with you. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. It really is so valuable to have a committee built like this. One of the most important things the Select Board does is hire and oversee the town administrator. So you've been selected because of the lens each one of you brings to this. And what's great is everything you do will be as a committee and as consensus. So that's really important because it blends all the viewpoints together in moving forward. We ultimately may have to hold some votes, but the work is, we go through the process, we'll say our goal is consensus, and then hopefully there's a motion at the end to have a vote. So it's really important that we all work. Phil and I use the word we are not members of your committee. So we are the consultants for the committee hired by the board to carry out what they voted in the profile, which was given out and is available on the screen if they are doing that. So the profile is what your charge is, and it is what our goal is to help. Our goal is to recruit. Your role is to screen the candidates. So that's what we're here for. So what we will do is we will briefly go through the process. We will kind of touch on some things we know we get questions about. Then, because of time, we'll answer any questions. So it'll be easier if we get through what we're going to say rather than go, because we're probably going to answer any questions you have. So what we'll do is go through that. Now, Phil a little bit misspoke because this is the first step. The first step was the profile by the board members. So the way we got the profile developed that you see in front of you is each of the board members was interviewed. We collected, you can see by the profile what's in there. That was based on Phil's individual meetings, information on the finance, on the logistics of the town, the demographics of the town, the description of what is being required of the next town administrator is set by the board. Individual opinions, Mary's opinion, Phil's opinion, Andrew's opinion, doesn't matter. This is the roadmap I use we, but please know that I mean you, because we will help you if in fact there's a debate of does somebody get qualified. You will see every resume that comes in. We do not screen out resumes. That's up for you to do. But that profile is your roadmap. Now, you bring your own lens to that of what you apply value to something when we're interviewing candidates, and that will come out in the questions you want to recommend and you all agree on to ask. So we just like to start with that because none of the committee members, you have to work as a whole. So you bring your own lens. So we do the profile. We've already advertised. We're already doing direct recruiting. Your job is not to get people to apply. If you know people you think would be a good fit, that's fine, but we need to be careful of our roles on a committee. Are we creating a bias of, oh, I know Mary's a great candidate. I'm going to give her this profile and encourage her to apply. Well, that's fine if we say, hey, you might be a good candidate. I thought you might be interested. It is not the role of the committee to do the direct recruiting. That is our job.
I have a
So if
question
people-
about that.
Sure. If people come up to you and say, hey, I see you're on the committee. Should I apply? Is it a good job? Really, our role is to point them to the profile and encourage everybody who's interested to apply. Go ahead.
So, like, for instance, the town of Norton just went through this same search for a town administrator, and they didn't hire a headhunter. They just put an ad in the paper, and they had 60 applicants. So what is the process for applicants, that not someone who comes to me personally, but who wants to apply to the town, but not through your center?
They have to apply through the center.
Where does it say that?
All this isn't for debate, this is the process the town has adopted, was to hire us to do this. They will not be seen by this committee.
Well, I read the contract, and it doesn't say that in there.
What I'm going to do is ask you, maybe we can put this discussion at the end, because we need to get through this meeting by 7:30. So when you see, if you don't want to be a member of this committee, which is being spearheaded by the Collins Center, you don't have to be.
I'm a member of the committee, you're not.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm not going to engage in this conversation with you right now. So what I'm going to do is get through this agenda and our presentation of the process that is in the contract with the Collins Center. We can debate, dispute, discuss at a different time. But what I don't want to have happen is we want to have everybody get through the agenda and what the process as part of the agreement with the Collins Center. If the board would like to change that process, they can bring that up at another date. So, as I said, the networking is going on now. So we encourage every and all applicants to apply. The posted profile in the ad issued by the town is that all resumes come to the Collins Center email. So, that is what we do. What we're doing now is going through the process. What we will do after this meeting, we are going to send draft questions to each of you via email. They will be based on the profile. These are just drafts based on our experience of what has been asked before. We're going to send that to each one of you so that you can edit, add, delete, come up with your own, whatever you want to do, send them back to us, so we will coalesce them for our next meeting, where you all will decide what questions you want to ask the candidates. Now, people will say, well, I don't know who the candidates are, I want to decide then. We want the questions to be job-related and not come from any lens or bias. This is the best practice that we have seen. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we ask all the candidates you all decide to come in to interview, a preliminary interview. Nobody is a finalist until they are voted out of this committee and their backgrounds are checked before they get to the select board. So it's really about what questions do you want to ask candidates based on your charge of the profile, what questions you ask. So you'll see in the draft, we will follow along the profile and say, where it says you need to be a strong manager or leader, we will have a question about that. It'll be very straightforward, but it's your role to finalize and come up with the questions. So we will do that. Often what comes up in this moment is that an open meeting issue? Not if we send you something, you give us edits, not shared with anybody, and then we coalesce that for deliberation and decision at the next meeting, which is booked for the 30th. So that's how we will do the questions. The next thing is, speaking of open meeting law, when we get to doing questions, is not an executive session function. That's going to be in public. When we get to reviewing resumes, that will be an executive session. One thing we cannot stress enough is the liability issues around confidentiality. The work of this committee has to be done in a committee meeting. We cannot have deliberations about candidates outside of this committee. We cannot have deliberations with anybody we know from another municipality. We can't have conversations with select board members about who the candidates are. The candidate's name will always be remained private unless they are named one of the finalists. So Nobody can ever know who the candidates are unless they are finalists. That leads us to the point of, on the agenda, social media and Google searches. Please do not search anybody's name that we receive an application on. It can cause an issue of bias, of liability, of, not that anybody ever intends to discriminate. We just want to make sure we will do, because if you search your name, is everything you find true? Some of my pictures I don't think are true, they must be cropped, the wide lens. You know, so we really discourage people from doing that. We work in the municipal fish bowl, we will know most of the people who apply, you know, and we will do the references and the background checks. That's not your role. So, so that's a very important thing, and the confidentiality is a really big issue. That's where committees have gotten into some hot water in the past. So I talked about the executive sessions, the development of questions, the review of all resumes received. You're going to get all the resumes. We will tell you if we feel somebody doesn't meet the minimum qualifications as decided by the select board, because sometimes there's an equivalent combination, you know, so that's for us to discuss as a group. Who do we think is qualified? We can say, you know, that feels like a stretch, or we know that person, you know, the years required in the profile are there to guide us. The way we do, the next process is the screening process. We will meet, and I'm going to send you, after a meeting tonight, I'm going to send you a calendar request again. We will need a meeting to review resumes. Then we will need meetings to do interviews. So we've got our meeting next week to finalize questions. We'll need a meeting to review resumes. The deadline is October 7th, so the dates will be after that. And then we will need meetings for interviews. So when I said it's about 6 meetings, tonight's one, next week is one, meeting to review resumes, hopefully shortly after October 7th. And then we typically see, and there's no way to judge, because it's up to you all to decide how many people you want to bring in for an interview. We typically see 3 dates for interviews. That's a safe bet. So that's where the 6 comes up. It all depends on availability. Yeah?
Sorry, on the
No.
3 dates, is it one interview per meeting?
No, it's
Or we-
3. It's 2 or 3 per meeting typically. In
2 or
our
3 people per
experience.
meeting, okay.
Yeah, in our experience, and again, this is your process in terms of the questions you want to ask. In our experience, interviews are scheduled for 50 minutes, an
Yep.
hour apart, 5 minutes in between. 3 interviews at a sitting, you need a break in there somewhere. It can be tiring. So that's why when we scope out the dates, we ask you to hold 3. If you want to interview only 6 people, or 6 is the number that you all agree on, you could do 2 per session, or you could do, no, our schedules are so tight, we're going to do 3 and 3. Until we get to the point with the dates and how many you all want to do, we can't really say. That's just our best guess, is 3 meetings for interviews. Sometimes it's 3, 3, and 2, and you have time for deliberations afterwards. We highly recommend, and have never found, you need a separate meeting for deliberations. It's because it is, cream rises, and we find after an interview, you all know. Then the backgrounds happen. So it's not like we need to wait for that. So we do find that in all but 2 cases in the 100+ of these that I've done, that deliberations are made after the last interview. But in that moment, you could decide, I want to think about it more. So that's up to, we'll see how it goes, but that's a great question. What will happen is, the deadline of October 7th will happen. Shortly after that, whatever day of the week that is, the 9th is a Thursday or Friday, the beginning of next week, probably over Columbus Day weekend, that's Columbus Day weekend, you will get an email, a confidential link to an email with all the resumes. In that email, it will have a table. It's a nice summary. We have one of our management analysts puts together a nice summary. It's a nice grid of, okay, Mary applied, Phil applied, this is Mary's degree, Mary's experience. You know, it's just a handy reference for you as you're going through applications. And it's really handy when you're in the meeting to talk about the candidates, because you're like, which one was that? Oh, here's my table. I can reference the application. You will receive every bit of information somebody submits to us. Some of them will send us 83 references. We'll send them to you. You know, don't read them, because references written don't mean much, because anybody can write a reference. What you will also receive on that day is a link to a form or survey, depending on it's a form in Teams or a survey in Google. I'll have to figure out the label of it. And what it will have, it's a poll, and it will have, say we get 10 resumes, just for the sake of the math. We get 10 resumes. It will say, Mary, the question that you're answering is, do you want to meet this person? Do you want to interview this person? You're going to say yes, maybe, or no for each one. So there'll be a question for each candidate. What we do, so that when we get together in person, much of the work is already done. So that will be a direct survey that it comes to us. We won't share the results beforehand, because we will want to do that at the meeting. So just receiving that information is fine. So at the meeting, we will put up on script paper, candidates 1 through 10. We will say, Mary got 7 no's. Nobody wants to meet Mary. Phil got 7 yeses. I'm going to use my sister's name. I'm coming up with name. I don't want to name anybody here. Patty got, 7 yeses. Well, the 7 yeses, we don't even need to debate, because they're going to have an interview. The 7 no's, we don't even need to discuss, because they're not getting an interview. We find if we had, for example, we just recently did Bellingham, we had 22 people apply. There were, 7 absolutes, one way or the other, and then we discussed the middle. So we're like, well, why is that a maybe? How many yeses, how many maybes? It really helps make the meeting more efficient. It's a great way, before we even get there, to have everybody's lens on the review. So we find that works very well. And then we will hash it out in debate. Who do you want to include? When you get to the maybes, because sometimes there'll be, 3 yes, 3 no's, and 1 maybe. Which way do you go? That's what you're here for. That's what you're here to debate. So we go through that. In the end, we will, as consensus, having a consensus, come up with who you want to move forward for interviews. That's going to be the toughest meeting, because that's the toughest part. We recommend including more. If it's close, spend an hour with someone. People look differently on paper than they do in person, so we say, when in doubt, bring them in. And we will ask you, because there will be some who are yes and some who are no. You need to convince the group of which way you want to go. We facilitate that. That's your decision. And at the end of that, somebody will typically make a motion of, let's move these 7, 8 people forward. And that's how we do it. So that will be then what happens with those names. We will then schedule them for the interview dates you will have already agreed upon. We will ask all the candidates the same question. That is a best practice. That doesn't mean you can't ask if there's time, a follow-up, but we really should be asking and judging each candidate by the same process. So that is how the interviews work. At the end of the interviews, It will be the same consensus method, but we're not going to send you a Google Form survey. We're going to put the names after the interviews up on a board and say, what do you think? And we'll go, yes, no, maybe, but we'll do that live. It won't be on a survey. And we'll see where people are of how many you want to move forward to the next round. We will then do references. They do not become finalists until their references are checked. We find, and this came up the other day at a question, we find that when people think they're going to be named publicly is when they withdraw, if they had any hesitation. So if they're like, oh, I'm not sure I want that, based on the interview, I got a great vibe, I did some more research, so it doesn't happen often, but that is when that happens. So then those names are given, once they pass the background, are given to the board. Once those names are checked, your role as screening committee is done. So it's a very tight role. It's critical, but it's not that expansive and not overburdening. The 3 dates of interviews can be a grind depending on how they fall and what you decide. Okay, I went through that. We're getting there. Good, making good time. Logistics. Now, we ended up being in person today and everybody made it, so that's great. Our meeting to finalize questions is next week. We made the option, if we want to just do it in person, so we can decide that. Why don't we just plan on, we can plan on hybrid and then go from there. But it'll be a straightforward, typically we don't meet in person to finalize questions, but we can. And I can certainly be on Zoom next week. I cannot be here physically next week.
I can be here physically,
So we'll see. Okay. Early to mid-October, the deadline is the 7th, so we're looking at that next week. I'm going to send you the calendar invite. It's too many people here to check your calendars to decide upon a date right now. And then preferably, the week after that would be the interviews. It's not a heavy vacation week, so we should likely be able to get people to come in for interviews. Sometimes we have a holdout date a following week, say somebody's on a cruise for a week. We want to meet them, we've got to be a little bit flexible. But once you give me, it's really important, when we send the dates, say yes or no to each date. It's not asking you what your favorite dates are. This way, we do a chart and compare who's available when. We absolutely want every member here at every interview and the deciding who to move forward date. So that will be our challenge. So the more yes dates you can give us, the better off we will be, because that's the source of delay. So we have staff who could fill in for us any day. You all can't be substituted. So the calendar is usually the challenge. So when we think about the roles, the meetings will look like this. The roles, the heaviest lift, and I don't know who wants to have the heaviest lift of the committee members. You can speak up now if you would like. Heaviest lift is the clerk. Because the clerk needs to do the minutes, the clerk needs to post the meetings. Now, we're partners in crime the whole time. We're like, oh, this is the typical agenda, thank you. And I'm going back. It's Jackie.
Jackie Mason.
Well, she's nominating herself.
Yes, I will.
So,
I'll second that.
Okay, we want to do, you seconded it, Andrew.
Third.
Any discussion? Anyone want to argue over it? Seeing none? All in favor?
All right.
Excellent, thank you. And again, the nuance is making sure that and we work with you on this, with the town clerk, we need to get the meetings posted properly, the executive session and the reason to go into executive session. We have all of that standard language. And then the minutes of executive session. We ask you to work with the clerk on how they do it here. Each town has it a little bit differently, so we don't want to opine on what needs to be in the minutes. Some use initials for candidates and confidentiality. Some use the full name because those can never be released because there was always be the reason for executive session. So there's some logistics on that. We'll deal with you on that. And Phil will give you his notes from today's meeting so that you can do that. So then the chair and the vice chair are certainly the role that will, when we get to votes being held, calling the roll, calling the vote, asking for the motions. The vice chair will fill in if the chair can't be there. Typically, and you all, when we get to setting up the interviews, will decide how you want to do the questions. Typically, the chair will be the one to greet the candidate, explain what the process is. During the interviews themselves, whoever is here from the Collins Center does not participate at all. We will greet the person in the parking lot. It's your turn, come in. This is your time to come in. We're the host and the hostess, but we will walk a candidate in and say, this is Phil Lemnios. I'll let Phil introduce himself to you all. We play no role in the actual interview. As a rule, we recommend you do not discuss candidates between interviews because you really want to have seen all of them before you start picking horses, and that's hard to do. It's hard to fight human nature, which is also why we hope that all of the interviews are in close proximity to each other. If we had every Monday for 3 weeks, that's a long time to wait. So we'll talk about that more as we get in there. So really, the chair is to be our liaison, so the Collins Center with the Select Board office, getting the meetings posted, where are the rooms, the clerk often helps get the rooms. This meeting is this room, it's a beautiful room, but it's not one we should be using when we're gonna have names of candidates on the walls and things like that. So we will have to think about that. We usually use a conference room for something like that, and those will always be in person. I think the reason we're here is because it's hybrid. So we may want to just switch next week to in-person so that it can be more of a conversation, and if you can be here next week, I could certainly be on a speakerphone or something, but half the work is already going to be done because you're going to send me your edits ahead of time. So things like that.
I have a question.
Anything.
During the interview process, do you guys use do you provide us with a scoring sheet, or should we come up with one for all of
Excellent.
us to have?
We do not, and in the contract, it says we do not use a scoring sheet.
Okay.
So,
Do you recommend them, or?
no, not at all.
No. Okay.
No, scoring sheets can lead to bias. If I know I want somebody who has a master's degree in computer science, I'm going to give that person 5 points. And somebody with a master's degree in public administration is going to get 0 points. Creating a matrix is an opportunity for validity issues. We will use, who do you think was good? You can create your own score system, but it is not going to be one that the whole board will use. So if you want to rate your why are they a yes, no, maybe, we're just going to ask yes, no, maybe. We're going to ask at the end of however many interviews we do, here's the names. Should they be moved forward or not? We don't say maybe in that one. We just say yes or no. And then we can discuss, because everybody would be a maybe, but excellent question. We don't, and you can see in our proposal and all of that, we don't use scoring.
And is there a number of finalists?
No, excellent question. So the scope does say that it's with the appropriate number. We don't, the reason we don't want you to have an absolute number is What if there's 5 equally wonderful candidates? What if 3 becomes 2 pretty quickly, But what would be worse is that you add a candidate that might be a B candidate for you, and that, only A candidates get moved forward. So it really does, cream rises and it usually works itself out. There is not a determined number voted. Some boards will say not less than 3 and not more than 5, but it's really what is the appropriate number.
One question I have.
Yes?
And again, it's probably obvious, but you've seen a lot of these towns around and the people, so you might say that the non-winners or the losers from the other ones are applying here, okay, and come in the process. Do you share any of that information with us ahead of time? And,
We will not share unless somebody has been a finalist. So
Okay.
we can't give you the names of any candidates. Now, we will be honest in meetings, we'll say we know that person, but we could know them for any reason. The Collins Center has worked in 275 of the 351 municipalities. So we know who
You know
people
the
are.
landscape.
Yeah, we know the landscape, but that's a really good question.
Yeah.
So just like your executive session minutes of this is a real risk for some people who are taking a chance. They're in high-profile jobs. To have their name be out there if they're not a finalist can really hurt them. I will give you a real-life example of, I did a search in Central Mass, and the chair of, I forget what he was the chair of, he was on the screening committee, but he was on one of the town boards. He goes, "Oh, I confidentially asked my friend in this other town about that person, and that person went to the select board. Our candidate got called out, he withdrew." It was horrible. So, I mean, these are people's jobs,
Right.
And somebody who has, and we can talk about this when we're deliberating, but I think you bring up a really good point. Somebody who has left a job does not always mean they were fired either. We live in a political world in town administration roles, and sometimes people leave jobs voluntarily, voluntold, fire, voluntold. That's my new phrase, voluntold. That doesn't mean they're not a strong candidate. So we'll talk about things like job hopping, that'll be something when you're reviewing resumes. How many voluntold jobs have you left? That's another indicator. If you've been, if you've not fulfilled the term of your contract more than a few times, that sometimes is a red flag. You'll see candidates who have been severance from the same town multiple times, meaning different candidates. So there's some towns that are more challenging than others. So we can talk about that as we look at candidates. So back to the role, because we have to have a vote. So back to the role of the chair and the vice chair. People can volunteer themselves. People can throw out a name. We don't care who it is. We will work with anybody. And the role is key in terms of running the meetings, but the scope of work is really, it's a pretty tight agenda. There's not much else to do, so.
I would recommend Steve be the chair. Seems the most boisterous. Anybody second that?
Anyone else?
I volunteer.
Okay. Anyone else? Do you want to be chair and vice chair together? We can have 2 co-chairs. It's really up to you.
I like the idea of a co-chair.
There you go.
Was that a motion?
I'll make a motion to make them both co-chairs.
Second it.
Any discussion?
Does that make it messy? I'm just asking other committee members, because I've been on committees where there's co-chairs, and it's
Oh.
challenging, because you don't have a clear voice.
Oh.
Yeah.
So unless you spell out in some sort of rules or charter what those responsibilities are, it can get challenging.
Certainly, I will bring up that we've had co-chair, in this role where it's so tight and the consultant is really the liaison, it's fine, it's more about who's gonna, there's not much to it, quite frankly, because there's no speaking to the press, there's no, none of that there's not any real, I'm not gonna say there's no real role. You're gonna be sitting where I'm sitting and you're gonna say, today we're gonna look at resumes. Today we're gonna look at questions. So we don't see.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I think it's important to understand that, people look at these roles, I think, in relation to maybe longer-term boards or committees, and it's not that the case. The fact of the matter is this process is a very tightly defined process. It was the process that was described to the Select Board during the solicitation period, and it was identified as the way in which there would be integrity and transparency in the process. So going to one of the questions earlier about having resumes submitted to multiple locations, that becomes a problem because you don't have a chain of control over the resumes, and if there's a documentation trail becomes a little more difficult. So there's a defined process here that says, first of all applicants must apply through the approved application method, and that means all applications are in one place. Anybody can apply. You will see all applications. The committee will ultimately have to decide who they desire to interview.
Well, I'd like to speak to that.
Okay, just let me finish my point. And I'm unaware, by the way, of any application process in any human resource function that allows multiple entry points for applications, because there are federal law and there's state law associated with hiring anybody. And you need to have a very clear, defensible documentation trail as to how you're going to do that. Holding on that point, the process, as Mary described, is very straightforward. The committee's next step is to vote the questions that are going to be asked all the candidates, because all candidates should be asked the same set of base questions. And there will be follow-ups that are unique to each candidate, but every candidate must be asked the same set of questions. And that will happen at the next meeting. And then there'll be a review of all the resumes received after the deadline, and that will happen shortly, hopefully shortly after October 7th. That will be done as the committee. The committee will then go through a process of determining of the total size of the universe, which candidates you want to interview as semifinalists. And that will happen over 2 or 3 meetings as described. At the end of that interview process, the committee will take a vote on some number of candidates to forward to the Select Board for finalist interviews. Before those candidates' names are made public, the candidate will be told, you're a finalist. References will be done, and then we'll be told you're a finalist, and we'll be told, once you agree to be a finalist, your name will be public. So, do you agree to be a finalist? And that's the point. Most candidates say yes, because they applied to acquire the job. So the position of chair and vice chair is not the same as it would be, for instance, for the Select Board. The Select Board chair in Marshfield has an immense amount of authority under the town charter. It's not that kind of a position. It's really an organizational thing. It's not, the chair cannot alter the process that was contracted for, as an example. The chair cannot say, we're not going to do interviews. The chair cannot say, I'm going to choose who we're going to interview. That's not the role of the chair or vice chair. The chair is a perfunctory position relative to this process, because the process is the process that was determined by the Select Board, not by this committee.
So, we have some serious budget problems coming up with South Shore Voltech.
Yep.
And to give a 3-year contract to a town administrator is really going to shape the future of this town for the next 3 years.
Let him finish.
And,
Let him finish.
and I believe by not allowing applications from outside of the Collins Center, you're limiting our talent pool, quite
Well,
frankly.
we're not, because.
Yes, you are.
Well, all applicants.
That's really not up for debate right now, so if in fact, but Phil, let me, again, this is my mediator role with 7 minutes to go.
And there's an appearance of political favoritism by only allowing UMass Boston to provide the applicants.
But it says,
For
though,
the
that it's being advertised in the ICMA and the MMA.
It is,
And Section 10 of the contract, which I have read, clearly states we have the right to interview and take applicants from outside of
Yes, you do.
the Collins Center.
The board does. If the board votes, I'm not going to speak for the board, and we're not really going to have public session here, because we have 7 minutes to go. So our process is what is laid out here. The role of this committee is laid out in this process. If in fact, the select board as a whole wants to modify that, they can do that. But it's not going to be done in this meeting. That is not what, you all have been put on this committee to work with us to get candidates. If you want to work to get candidates outside of this committee, we are happy to end this contract, and the town can do what it wants. So what we need is a chair who believes in this process. So I think we have had discussion, and there can
If I
be
could
a-
just
a-
comment and interrupt in the
Yes,
interest
please
of
do.
time. In reflecting what Mr. Kelleher said and what Phil said from the Collins Center, I am now definitely more comfortable with just having a chair and a vice chair, personally. However, in the interest of time, perhaps we could vote on our committee right now for an individual chair, or if it should be a combined chair. I personally would prefer, if I am selected as chair, to be individual.
Okay, so the technical thing is, there was a motion and there was discussion. So is that an amendment to the motion?
That's an amendment to the motion.
Okay. To have one person be chair, or
To
to have
have
you be
one
chair?
person be chair, and then another person to be and another individual to be vice chair that's selected by the committee. And for each of those separate positions, if the amendment goes through, then the committee has to nominate who
Okay.
they want for a chair.
So the motion on the floor right now is to not have it be combined and have it be two separate positions. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I just bring up the discussion about the co-chair, and it was, kind of think it was alluded to, it's just, it's 5 more meetings after this. So this is, if I could just succinctly say, the reason why I thought co-chairs would be, is just, we got a tight script as to what we're being asked to do here within 5 meetings, and I just don't think we just have time for anything more than that, and that we could just charge through what we need to do. So that
Okay.
was my reasoning for having co-chairs.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of having separate positions, chair and co-chair? Well, 1, 2, 5 to 2. Okay. So then,
Not 5-2, I didn't vote.
5 to 1 and 1 abstain. Have I got
Can I-
that right? People who didn't raise their hand. All those opposed? Okay. All those abstaining?
No. I just want to ask a
Abstain.
question. Okay, I
Yeah,
just, when we go through all of this, it's advisory to the select board. Who makes the decision finally to hire the town administrator? The
The
select board?
select board. All you do, all this committee does is give them finalists.
Okay.
So now,
In rank order of 1, 2, 3?
no, we do not, excellent
Yeah.
question. All candidates are unranked. They've got to be, as I mentioned, you don't put in a B candidate. You all will vote a slate of candidates unranked. You can have your personal opinions, but it will be the vote of the committee. Okay, so now, is there a nomination on the floor for chair?
I'd like to make a motion for Mr. Andrew Wenning to be our chair.
Any second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
I'd like to volunteer for vice chair as well. I have experience as vice chair in the CPC, if that carries any weight.
I second that.
I'm sorry?
I said I second that.
You need to be the first. You volunteered,
first.
so you're making a motion for Mr. Kelleher to be vice chair. Is
I'll
there a
second.
second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Okay. Guys have it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So any item before we adjourn?
Questions that are going to get formulated, when's that period we're going to be able to get the standardized questions to ask all candidates?
Oh, excellent. I'm going to send you a draft set based on the profile. that each one of you can use as a guide, but you can, and we'll have spaces there, you add new questions you want to ask, you want different ones, you tweak it, let's ask it this way. The reason you're on this committee is because of your lens in this community. So we really want, but sometimes it's easier to start with a draft than it is to come up with them. So we will do that for you all. We will send those out. You will get those by tomorrow. You will get the calendar request by tomorrow. So, Mr. Chair, you can motion to adjourn. Anything else before we go?
Point of order from the public.
Oh,
Point number one, I tried to get in remotely and I was not allowed in. Point number two, could you please at some point specify how the public can or cannot be involved throughout this process?
sure.
Thank you.
Two things, I will answer you. Two things is, I'm sorry if you couldn't get in. I'm not in charge of the meeting, apologize. Each meeting is public. The public is welcome at each meeting. They will be asked to leave during executive sessions, just like any other open meeting. So I'm sorry you couldn't get in. All right.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second. Yeah. Jackie second.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.